Great. So I just wanted to kick off and thank everyone for joining us tonight. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jessica Polano. I'm the Director of Development at Montgomery School. And one of the things that I'm charged with is raising funds for our school. We have lots of different ways that we do that. And tonight, I'm thrilled that you can all join us. I wanted to introduce one of our partners that we are working with on the EITC program, which is the Educational Improvement Tax Credit. We are working with Redefined on helping to elevate Montgomery Schools' access to this funding, which is crucial to our school and to our families. So Elise is from Redefined, is going to share some information with you all here tonight. And I'm going to pass it off to her.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And Jessica, if you could just give me a thumbs up whenever you do see it, that would be great. Perfect. All right. So again, as Jessica said, my name is Elise Masonic, and I am the founder and CEO of Redefined. I started this company because I myself was an EITC scholarship recipient, which gave my family the ability to afford a private education through someone giving their tax dollars that they already had to pay to the state. They redirected them through the EITC program, which created a scholarship. So we're going to talk about really what we do as Redefined, and our goal is to help schools fund the gap between tuition, so what they charge parents, and what the true cost schools pay to educate each child. Because in most instances, and it's the same at Montgomery, is the true cost to educate is actually, it far exceeds what they charge in tuition. So tuition just covers typically a portion of the overall true cost to educate. So we're a private sector solution solving public policy issues, and we help make the Educational Improvement Tax Credit Program more accessible to people like you and me. So by making it easier for everyday people to participate and use their tax dollars to help fund the financial aid program at the school, we help that funding to keep the rising cost of education from being passed on to students and families just like yours. We're going to talk about a few things tonight: that rising cost of education, how the school covers those costs currently, what we can do to keep costs low for students and families, and lastly, I'm going to walk you through, if you're paying taxes and you would rather them go to the students and families at your school, I'm going to walk you through how to do that. So how does the true cost of education affect the tuition that you pay? And why is EITC and raising these funds important? So as I talked about, there is a gap that exists between what the true cost to educate is, so the school's annual budget divided by the amount of students. That number far exceeds what schools ask parents in the form of contributions towards tuition. Okay, what happens is that gap on average is about $3,600 per student for the average school. So the school currently covers those costs through fundraising, and Jessica knows a lot about that in her role, and I'm sure the families on this call feel the same thing. We fundraise at private schools, they rely on generous donations, those sorts of things to cover that gap so they don't have to pass the full cost to educate on to families. What the EITC program can do, and those tax dollars that everyone is paying, if we leverage them to the school's financial aid program, we can actually fund that gap with EITC dollars from your taxes and the community's tax dollars, instead of relying solely on fundraising. And what happens, hold on 1 second. No. There you go. And what happens in that instance is, let's say that the gap total, you take the 3,600 per student, let's say there's 100 students. In that example, the gap is $360,000 per year, right? What happens if that gap is not covered through fundraising efforts or generous donations? Schools the next year, if there is, let's say they only were able to cover 300,000 of that gap, what happens is schools are left taking what wasn't raised and dividing it over the amount of students that there are. And that's typically how tuition increases year over year happen. So we are looking to be able to fund that fully with EITC tax dollars. And we do this through, with Redefine, we do this with Blocks. Blocks is the largest EITC scholarship organization in the state. And EITC is the #1 funding source for schools in private schools in Pennsylvania. And as I said, these funds can help ensure that that rising cost that schools all across the nation are seeing is not passed on to your students, your families. So with more EITC funding, we can then cover that gap between the actual cost and parent contributions. And because EITC funding is so crucial to keeping parent costs lower than the true cost to educate, we ask families to do one of two things, but you can do both. So every family should apply for financial aid. Our company not only helps with EITC, but we help get schools additional funding through state programs. There is a program that exists that can give the school up to $4,000 per student if we could get 51% of those families showing that they qualify under the current EITC guidelines. So filling out the financial aid form is so important because once we can get the school to that 51%, it allows us to help fund that gap with even other government state programs and that funding. The second thing that we ask is if you're paying taxes, the EITC program is an incredible way to take those taxes that you're paying and use that to benefit the students and families on this call and in your school community. So what is EITC? EITC is the Educational Improvement Tax Credit Program, and it's run through the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development. I want to be clear that there are two EITC programs. One is a federal, and it's called the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is completely different than the one we're going to talk about tonight. This is a state tax credit program, and it's the Educational Improvement Tax Credit. But in the simplest terms, the EITC program is just a way to direct the tax dollars that we already pay to the school's financial aid program instead of directing those dollars to the state. So when you participate and you sign up, your tax dollars are then transformed into scholarships for students right here at the school. And this program, even though many of you are probably hearing it for the first time, it actually has been around for over 20 years. So it started in 2001 and in the state of Pennsylvania to allow taxpayers to use their tax dollars to be incentivized to fund tuition assistance programs at non-public and private schools. And it's a 90% tax credit. So for every dollar that you would contribute to the financial aid program, you get a tax credit of 90 cents on that dollar. And every year, over 60,000 students in Pennsylvania are awarded these scholarships to attend a school of their choice. And the likelihood that if you are currently receiving financial aid from the school, that it is coming from the EITC program is very high. So if you're receiving financial aid off of your current tuition, the chances are it's from some member in the community that's leveraging their tax dollars to give the school financial aid dollars to pass out. And as you can imagine, the more people that find out that we can have a say in how our tax dollars are used, the more it's grown in popularity. In fact, just this year in the budget, they passed another $150 million in tax credits, making it over $600 million in scholarship opportunities that are available to students and families just like yours. And what's happening is there's not enough people that know about this program. And so they don't participate. And then those dollars don't come to Montgomery School, right? So we really want to make sure that your students and your families get that fair share. That $600 million is available every single year for students and families like yours. We just have to come together as a community to participate and send our tax dollars to this program. And a huge majority of your students at the school qualify for EITC scholarship, especially with the new guidelines. So I don't know if all of you know this, but what's really cool about the EITC guidelines to qualify to receive EITC dollars, you can, with a family of two, make up to, I believe it's $150,000 adjusted gross income and still qualify under the EITC guidelines. So it's really important that you apply for financial aid because the chances are that most of your families will qualify. And then with every dependent, you get to add $20,000 to that income for qualification purposes. And while approximately 73% of students statewide qualify for EITC funds, sadly, right now, only 3% of students are actually receiving those funds because so many people don't know about this program. And we want, as I said, your students to get the fair share of funding from this program. The piece of pie that should come to your school from this $600 million is large, and it can make a huge difference if we can increase participation rates in your community. And think about this. Think of everyone on this call. If we all came together and gave our state tax dollars that are coming out of our pay to the school's financial aid program instead, and if the entire community did that, the school, and we've seen it happen, we work with 100 schools across the state of Pennsylvania, and we have seen schools fundamentally change the financial aid program and increase financial aid packages to students for years to come. So if you're on this call and you're saying, you know what, I do pay taxes and I would rather those dollars make a difference, I'm going to walk you through exactly how it works. If you're a W-2 income earner, which means that you earn a paycheck from a company that you work for, the first step is going to be to determine how much you are paying in PA state income tax. That number for last year can be found on line 12 of your PA 40 form, but you can also figure out a really rough estimate because the state tax rate is 3.07 on your income, your taxable income. So if you took your income and multiplied that by 0.0307, that's going to give you what you're paying in taxes, a very rough estimate. And the coolest thing about this program, as I said, that if many of you are probably hearing about this program for the first time, but on top of that, if you did hear about the program, many thought that it was just for businesses. And you're right. Back in 2001, when this was started, it really was designed as a corporate loophole, a corporate tax benefit, right? So when big businesses gave, they got 90% of it back, and they got to write that other 10% off as a federal charitable deduction, right? It wasn't intended for everyday people like me and you to be able to leverage our tax dollars. But through some incredible scholarship organizations and genius CPAs, now everyday people, if your income is $35,000 or more in your annual income, you should be able to direct your tax dollars through this program. And so now when you give, you can also get it back, just as these corporations and businesses have been doing for the last 2 decades. So we're going to do something really quick. I'm going to ask you to pull out a calculator on your app or on your phone, because what I'm going to do as we go through some really quick examples, I want you to have a number in your head of really an idea of what you're paying annually. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and pull out your calculator. And in your calculator, I'd like you to put your total annual household income. So total annual household income. And then we're going to multiply that by 0.0307. So total household annual income multiplied by 0.0307. And that number in your calculator that you've just calculated, that represents the impact that you could have for the students and families on this call, for the students and families at your school, and for the students in your community. That number represents what you are currently sending to the state, and you're not seeing much of a difference for it. That shows the impact that you could have right here on your community and what you could leverage, okay, in that program. So you have your number. What's next? So if you want to take those tax dollars and you said, you know what, let's say you calculated it was $3,000. You say, I'd rather, be able to have the school hand out $3,000 more in financial aid for these tax dollars instead of sending them to the state. You would fill out a form. And Jessica did have these forms sent home. It's a 1-page form. It's your information that gives us the ability to register you at the scholarship organization and get you approved for the tax credit. If you own a business or you pay quarterly estimated payments, you're a 1099, right? You pay quarterly estimated payments. The first step is the same as a W-2. You just want to figure out what your annual PA state income tax is. As a business or someone that is paying quarterly estimated payments to the state, what's really cool is if you pledge your entire annual tax liability to this program, Once you sign our form, you could actually stop and suspend your quarterly payments under what's called safe harbor, which is awesome. So instead of sending a check in April, a check in July to the state, you would just hold on to them. And then at the end of the year, you would just write one check to the charity, and all of those dollars would go to the students and families at your school. And then at the end of the year, the state will still give you credit on that contribution that you made that went to the students and families. The state's going to give you a payment credit as if you did pay 90% of your taxes throughout the year. So step by step. So today you would fill out that pledge form that was sent home, and you would send it back to us, right? So you can put it in the book bags of your students. You could email it to us. But once we have it, we register your pledge form with the Blocks organization, which again is the largest scholarship organization in the state. They will then, once they approve you for the program, you're going to receive an electronic DocuSign that you would sign electronically. After you do that, you would go ahead and submit that contribution, that tax credit eligible contribution to the Blocks organization within 60 days of signing the DocuSign, or by November 1st, whichever one comes soonest. At tax time, you receive a tax receipt, or what's called a K-1, by March 15th, and then you submit that with your taxes. That shows the state that you made a contribution and they owe you a payment credit of 90% of that contribution. In the summer and fall, if you are a W-2 employee, you're actually going to receive that back in a tax credit refund. And so your refund comes back in the summer or fall as an overpayment of your tax liability. And this is typically a 2-year program. So what would happen is you would put it in, you would get 90% of that back in a tax refund. And then that second year, you could roll it over one more time. So this is where we lose people sometimes. So I just want to walk you through it. So if you're a W-2, this is how it works. From January 1st to December 31st, you get a paycheck. And let's say 3.07% of your income is equal to $5,000, okay? What that means is every paycheck between January 1st and December 31st, you have a gross pay, which is always so exciting, and then on your pay stub, there's a net pay. In between those two numbers, that 3.07 is actually getting taken out in increments. So by the last pay of the year, let's say that total was $5,000, what you were going to owe, that is actually sitting there at a tax bank, right? At the Department of Revenue on your behalf as you've paid it in. So let's say that you wanted to notify the state that you are going to participate and you want to send your tax dollars instead to the scholarship organization. What you would do is those deductions are still going to come out, okay? That won't change. But what you would do is sign the pledge form, and then by November 1st, let's say you wanted to participate at the full $5,000 that you're allowed, because you can give up to 100%. So you write a contribution check by November 1st to the scholarship organization. When you file your taxes with that tax receipt or K-1, what the state calculates is, all right, they owed $5,000, but we see here that they paid in $5,000 throughout the year in their payroll deductions. But hey, this K-1, we have to apply a payment credit on their tax account for this year of, in that case, $4,500. 90% of this contribution that they gave, we have to give it back to them. So what happens is the state then sees you paid $5,000 through deductions, right? But they give you another $4,500 payment. So total, you've paid $9,500 towards your taxes, but you only owed $5,000, right? So they then give that back to you in the form of a tax refund. So that's how that works. That basically, when you write that contribution check to the scholarship organization, that is you writing your taxes to the scholarship organization, and the state says, hey, whenever we get that receipt, we have to pay them back what they've paid in through payroll deductions and send that back to them, 90% of that, okay? And we're going to open it up to questions at the end. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any that pop up. And your contribution makes a huge difference. So think about this. If you did $3,000, right, that really turns into $5,700 in impact, right? $3,000 would go to the school students and families to offset the rising cost of education. And then you would also receive back $2,700. If you did $5,000 in a contribution, that turns into $9,500 worth of impact. Not only would the students, schools, and families, students, school, and families receive that full $5,000, but you would also receive back $4,500. So you can see how quickly this does make a difference in the communities that pull together and do this as a big participation. I'm going to walk you through really quickly a business example. These are the Smiths. They own Smith Residential. They pay $10,000 a year in taxes, and they wanted all of that instead of going to the state. They wanted to make a contribution to the financial aid program at their child's school. So they signed the pledge form and then submit it to us. And then they stop paying their quarterly estimated payments, right? They no longer send in those $2,500 payments 4 times a year to the state. They just keep hold of it. The Smiths receive that DocuSign from Blocks in their email, and then they sign it. Within 60 days of signing that DocuSign, they send in the $10,000 contribution. So at the end of the year, they send in the $10,000 check to the Blocks organization instead of sending any checks to the state. They receive that tax receipt for that K-1, and they file that with their taxes by March 15th. The Smiths then get credit for paying 90% of their business income taxes. And this is what's cool. Their $10,000 contribution turned into $19,000 worth of impact. The school received the entire $10,000 to give to students and families. And then the Smiths also got credit as if they did send $9,000 worth of payments into their tax, into the Department of Revenue at PA. Here's some important things to know. It's important to sign that reservation pledge form because there are only a limited number of credits available each year that the state gives out. So there's always more people that want to get that tax credit than there are credits available. So we need to get your school, right, and those pledge forms in as soon as possible so that we can get you guys approved. Your refund, your state refund, not your federal, because it does not affect federal, but it will come typically late summer, early fall. And like I said, this is they try to do a 2-year program. So if you sign in this year, you would make that contribution, you would get that 90% back. And then whenever you get it back, you could roll it in one more time to make a 2nd-year contribution. I really want to go over this too. EITC is a separate line item in the state budget. So let's say everyone in your Montgomery community decides to do this. Your public school is still going to have the same amount of funding. Your municipalities, your city, townships, all of them are still going to receive the same state funding that was budgeted because EITC is funded through a separate line item and does not affect other tax allocations. If you itemize on your federal, and I will be honest, most people don't, they just take the standard deduction on the federal, but if you itemize, you can write that other 10% off on your federal taxes. So think about this. Let's say for you calculated it was $10,000, okay? Think about how cool this is. Or you write a check for $10,000. You get $9,000 of that back, okay? That $1,000 that you don't get back, you get to write that off as a charitable contribution, which allows you to reduce your income by $1,000, which saves you your federal tax rate on that $1,000. If your federal tax rate is 34%, save another $340. So that's something I think is really, really cool. So in that example, to give $10,000 to the school's financial aid program that benefits the students and families on this call and in your community, to give $10,000, your true cost, if you itemize, is $670. So it's a huge opportunity for the true cost of that being, and if you take that even further, those big businesses out there, if you know someone that owns a big business that is successful, this is an awesome opportunity because they can give, let's say they had a $100,000 tax liability. If they gave it through this program, they could give a $100,000 contribution to the students, schools, and family, and it would only cost them $6,300 to give $100,000. So that's what we're really talking about. It makes such a big difference. As I said, it's a 2-year commitment. Now, if for some reason, like you sign up this year and then next year you can't do it because your tax liability was too low or something, there is no penalty for you. You need to sign the DocuSign once you receive it, and then you have to submit your check within that 60 days. If you or your spouse, if you and your spouse, so both of you, work for a nonprofit or the government, you need to own at least one PA stock in order to participate. As I talked about, this was written into law as a benefit for businesses, right? And so one of the ways that the CPAs and scholarship organizations were able to open this program up to so many people is they changed the language in the policy law. And so that language in there says that if you earn an income from a business, a for-profit business, that you can now participate. So to check that box, if you are both in your household a non-profit employee or a government employee, to check that box to participate as an individual, you would just have to own at least one PA stock. And we have a lot of people do that. There's, PA stocks that you can get for 13 cents. So if that's something that you would like to do, you can absolutely do it. And you can change your amount before you write that check and sign that pledge, the DocuSign. So let's say that you sign your pledge form for, you calculate it was $5,000, right? And you go to sign that pledge form. It's at the end of the year. I mean, the DocuSign is at the end of the year, and you say, I don't know if I can really float those dollars, right? I don't know if I can float 5,000 and go without that until I get my refund. That's okay. You can say, all right, maybe you could do 3,000 or whatever you're comfortable with. That's something that's really nice is you can go up and down in this program. And if for some reason you can't participate, this is so important. You know someone who can. It is any taxpayer that pays Pennsylvania state income taxes that has at least a $1,000 tax liability in the state of PA. It could be an aunt, an uncle, someone, a friend that owns a business, even if it's not in the same county. They don't have to be connected to the school. But tell people about this program, because the more people that we can get interested in this program, signed up for this program, the more it's just going to benefit the students and families at the school, because it all goes into the financial aid bucket. And as that bucket gets filled, it's required through this program that these dollars are used for financial aid and scholarship reductions in tuition. That's a requirement. So they have to give it out. And so if we can grow that bucket, it's just going to benefit the families and students more and more. So what do current EITC participants say about the program? This is Greg. He said, as an EITC participant, I get a say in how my tax dollars are used. When I thought about it, it seemed that our tax dollars never made their way back to our area. I signed up because this was something that gave me confidence that my taxes were actually making a difference that I could see. If we all stick together and participate, we can really change the future for the youth in our communities. And I encourage everyone I know to join. And he really does. This is not a real picture of Greg, by the way, in full transparency, but this is, he is a real participant, and he's in Blair County, and he tells everyone about it. He's been great. And then these are the Smiths, again, not a real picture of them, but they're business owners. And this is what they said. If we had to tell people about this program, we would simply say one thing: do it. It makes our taxes so much easier, not having to worry about quarterly payments, and we get recognized from the community for our support. And I just want to point this out. I'm sure many of you have seen in the newspaper, like a big business with a big check that they're giving to a school or giving to some type of program, right? Many people don't realize that those were dollars they were going to have to send anyways. 9 times out of 10, those businesses are giving through the tax credit program. So it's a really cool way for businesses to give so much back with such a tiny cost. And I love this. There is no better way for a business to support the town they do business in. Our customers have given us so much, and through this program, we can give it back. So I just want to reiterate, these business owners, they want to give, they want strong communities. They want to give back to those communities that have helped them become successful in their business, right? And when they find out that instead of sending 4 checks throughout the year to the state, and they could just write one and it helps the community that they do business in, they are so excited. So if you know of anyone that owns a business, get them in touch with our team, because we love to talk about it, and we'll walk them through step by step what they need to do to make a difference. And it gets better, everyone. This is something that's really cool. So the school knows how important this program is to the success of the school to keep tuition costs low. And so they've actually, the minimum contribution, as I said, is $1,000, right? So you have to have at least $1,000 in tax liability in order to participate. So even at the minimum, what's going to happen is the school has said anyone that signs their pledge form tonight and finishes their participation for this year will get an extra $100 off their tuition or fees for the next school year. So even if you did the minimum, right? You do $1,000 goes to the students, schools, and families in the financial aid program, right? You then get back $900 as a state tax credit. And then also you get $100 that makes you whole. So for no cost, you are able to help fund the financial aid program for your school. So with that, I just want to say thank you everyone for your time. Our website is redefiningeducation.org. Info@redefiningeducation.org is where you can send any pledge forms. And with that, Jessica, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for any closing statements, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Great, thank you so much. So here's information on the screen here about redefining education. Their website. We also have an EITC tab on our Montgomery School website. So if you go to our main page, under giving, there's an EITC tab that you can learn more about it there. I'm also available to talk to families, talk to you, talk to businesses. We really partner with Redefine and work closely together on this. So either one of us is available for questions on that. So thank you again for taking time out of your evening tonight. And if there's questions, we are happy to take those now.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Again, we're so excited to really partner with Montgomery School with an enrollment as high as 300. There's a lot of work to be done, and we're really excited to work with your community. And our team, we have an awesome team. You will hear probably from Haley Youngkin. She is our donor relationship manager that works within your school community now. That we've done this kickoff. We're going to work within the community of calling community members to see if they know of anyone that they could refer us to talk about the EITC program. So keep a lookout for a call potentially from her if she runs across you in the community. But again, thank you so much for joining, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. All right. Well, Jessica, it seems that there are no questions, which has never happened, by the way. I've been doing this for 4 years, and I've never had a presentation that I did so good that I left no questions unanswered. But you guys can absolutely reach out to me. Jessica will go ahead and send a copy of the recording out tomorrow. We'll go ahead and send it to her. You'll have our contact information. So I know sometimes it can be, you want to ask questions one-on-one. I'm here to help in any way, and so is my team. And yeah, we look forward to working with everyone. So with that, we'll kind of let it go.
Great. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here. Elise, thanks for spending time with us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.